Every moment of our life is always different. At times, it can be easy, and at times, it's very hard. But from everything we go through, we always learn a valuable lesson. A perfect thought for the day in today's situation, isn't it? This pandemic, though hard a situation, has really taught us many valuable lessons. A pleasant Wednesday morning to you, my dear children. I'm happy to be with you once again through this virtual class. And I welcome you all to Class 8 Social Science Geography session. Well, in the previous session, our topic was weather and climate. The elements and factors that determine the climate of a place and the causes of weather change. Moving forward, today's topic is about an important element related to weather and climate. Can you guess what it is? Yeah, it is the one and only element which makes life possible on Earth. Human beings, plants, animals, and every living creature on Earth depend on it for their survival. So what else could it be but water? It is the most important element on Earth and the only reason for planet Earth to be named as the watery planet. Now, where does this water come from and where does it go? Even water has a never-ending circulation system which is a continuous process, and hence it is called as a closed system. This process is universally called as the water cycle or the hydrological cycle. It is the science which deals with the various aspects of water. To understand this hydrological cycle, let's watch this video.
About the water cycle. The water we use today has been around for a long time. That is because water can recycle itself in the water cycle, which is also called the hydrologic cycle. Let's start this cycle with the evaporation of water from the surface of the ocean. As this moist air is lifted, it cools and water vapor condenses. It may form clouds. In fact, clouds are made up of tiny water droplets and ice crystals that are so small they can float in the air. This moisture in the atmosphere may be transported around the globe until it returns to the surface as precipitation. Precipitation may take the form of rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Now, once this water reaches the ground, one or two processes may occur. Some of the water may evaporate back into the atmosphere, or the water may penetrate the surface and become groundwater. The groundwater may take several different paths. The groundwater may seep its way into the oceans, river, or streams. Or it may go into an aquifer, which is a body of saturated rock through which water can easily move. Or it may be released back into the atmosphere through transpiration. Transpiration occurs when leaves from trees and other vegetation give off water vapor through pores in their leaves. Some water on the Earth's surface is not absorbed by plants or become groundwater, and it becomes surface runoff. This runoff may empty into lakes, rivers, and streams, and then is carried back to the ocean where the cycle may begin. So there we go, the basics of the water cycle.
Now, let's look into the hydrological cycle in a more comprehensive manner. To begin with, here are the learning objectives of today's class. To understand the status of water on the earth, to learn the basic concepts of the hydrologic cycle, and to study the different components of the hydrologic cycle. The components such as evaporation, condensation, precipitation, percolation, and runoff. And for today we shall see about evaporation, transpiration and condensation. Water is one of the most important elements on earth, and all plants and animals need water for survival. Now coming to water, the status of water on the earth. About 71% of the earth's surface is covered by water, and most of the water on the earth is saline and is found in seas and oceans. The salt water constitutes about 97.2% and the fresh water is only about 2.8%. Out of this 2.8% of fresh water, only 2.2% is available as surface water and the remaining 0.6% is found underground, or we call it as groundwater. From this 2.2% of surface water, 2.15% is available in the form of glaciers and ice caps, and 0.01% in lakes and streams, and the remaining 0.04% is in other forms. Only about 0.25% of the total groundwater of 0.6% is available for economic purposes. So from this data, we understand how little fresh water is available and how much effort we should put in to conserve this precious water. Hydrologic cycle or the water cycle. Hydrology is a science which deals with the various aspects of water, such as its occurrence, distribution, movement and the properties on planet Earth. Hydrologic cycle is a global sun-driven process where water is transported from oceans to atmosphere, from the atmosphere to land and from land back to oceans. So what comes from up goes once again from where it originated. So this is how we see, or we say it is a continuous process. The process of the hydrologic cycle starts with evaporation. Evaporation takes place from the surface water and transpiration from the plants. The 6 main components of the hydrologic cycle are evapotranspiration, condensation, precipitation, infiltration, percolation and runoff. Now let's move on to the first important element, that is evapotranspiration. It is defined as the total loss of water from the earth through evaporation from the surface water bodies and the transpiration from vegetation. In cropped areas, it is difficult to determine the evaporation and transpiration separately. Therefore, it is collectively called as evapotranspiration. Evaporation refers to the process in which the liquid form of water changes into gaseous form. Temperature is the prime element which affects the rate of evaporation. The extent of surface water, wind and the atmospheric humidity are the other variables which affect the rate of evaporation. Many studies reveal that the oceans, seas, lakes and rivers provide nearly 90% of the moisture in the atmosphere through evaporation, and the remaining 10% is contributed by plants through transpiration. So we see how the rate of evaporation is determined by the speed of wind, by the increase in temperature, the decrease in humidity. What is humidity? That is, when the atmosphere already holds plenty of water vapor, the rate of evaporation will be relatively low. And finally, the increase in the areal extent of surface water bodies also determine the rate of evaporation. Now coming to transpiration. Transpiration refers to the process by which the water content in the plants are released into the atmosphere in the form of water vapor. Much of the water taken up by plants is released through transpiration. So, here again the rate of transpiration is also affected by the temperature, wind and humidity. Now, moving to the next important element, that is condensation. What is condensation? It is the process in which the gaseous form of water changes into liquid form. Condensation generally occurs in the atmosphere when warm air rises, cools and loses its capacity to hold water vapor. As a result, the excess water vapor condenses to form cloud droplets. So, condensation is responsible for the formation of clouds, or we can say it is the reverse process of evaporation. We shall now see what are the different forms of condensation. They are dew, fog, frost, mist and clouds. Now, what is dew? Dew is a water droplet formed by the condensation of water vapor on a relatively cold surface of an object. It forms when the temperature of an object drops below the dew point temperature. The next form of condensation is frost. The ice crystals formed by deposition of water vapor on a cold surface of an object is known as frost. Frost forms when the temperature of an object drops below the freezing point of temperature. The next form of condensation is fog. Fog is the suspended tiny water droplets or ice crystals in an air layer next to the Earth's surface that reduces the visibility to 1000 meters or lower. We now move on to mist. Mist is the tiny droplets of water hanging in the air. These droplets form when the water vapor in the air is rapidly cooled, causing it to change from invisible gas to tiny visible water droplets. Mist is less dense than fog. And the last form of condensation is clouds. Clouds consist of tiny water droplets or ice particles which are so small and light in weight. They are formed by microscopic drops of water or by small ice crystals. The size of the droplets generally range from a couple of microns to 100 microns. This is the limit beyond which cloud drops become raindrops. So, what are the conditions under which condensation occurs? Condensation occurs when the air gets saturated, that is, when it cannot hold any more water vapor, and then warm air can hold more water vapor than the cool air. So, saturation naturally occurs when the temperature drops down. Shall we now go for a short recap of all that we saw in today's session, children? Yeah. We saw about water, how water is one of the most important elements on earth, and how plants, animals and human beings need water for their survival, and what gives earth the name as watery planet. Then we saw the status of water, how 71% of the earth's surface is covered with water, and out of this only 2.8% is fresh water, that is water which can be used, and the remaining 97.2% is salt water found in oceans and seas. Then we moved on to the hydrological cycle, that is how it is a global sun driven process where Water is transported from oceans to atmosphere, from the atmosphere to land, and from land back to the oceans. We see how the water is in complete circulation. That is why it is called as a cycle. Then we saw the important components of the hydrologic cycle, and we focus today on evapotranspiration and condensation. So, kindly go through your social science textbook, read the lesson till what we saw in today's session, and you will understand the lesson better when you read twice, and please pay attention to all the illustrations that are related to today's topic. Thank you, children. God bless you.